Hi there, everyone. Bryan from the Oraculos School of Astrology, and welcome to Mychal Fix My Stars, my new astrology hotline where I help real people troubleshoot real challenges that they face within their lives using the wisdom of astrology.
Okay, so I'd like to know what my birth chart is telling about my professional life. I've been freelancing for the past few years and I no longer wish to work as an employee or for anyone else. I'd like at some point to run my own business and be fully independent. I also want to self-publish as well. I write both fiction and nonfiction books. So I'm curious to know if there are any success indicators regarding my professional life and objectives, especially in the years to come.
All right, so this caller wants to know about her natal destiny as far as her professional life is concerned. The chart information is April 4th, 1990 at 6:45 p.m. in Toulouse, France, and she has 26 degrees Virgo, 28 minutes rising, with 25 degrees Gemini, 47 minutes, culminating on her midheaven. I like myself a good aphorism. Let me explain why I like aphorisms so much. I like aphorisms so much because they allow me to blame my astrological flaws and defects on other astrologers. So I love a good aphorism because I am not the inventor of any aphorism. All of the aphorisms that I use within my astrology are at the minimum 400 years old and at the maximum thousands of years old. So there is one aphorism, I can't remember from who. I don't always remember who all the aphorisms come from, but I know that they exist. There is one aphorism that says, I'm getting heartburn just thinking about saying it because if it's one thing the online astrological community knows how to do, it's how to take something out of context. But anyway, I'm going to say it. So there's one aphorism that says that when a person has a mutable sign on their ascendant, which naturally also means they have a mutable sign on their descendant, that's one of the indications of that person having multiple marriages. There's another aphorism that says, particularly if a person has Gemini descending on the cusp of their seventh house, then that is an indication that that person is going to have at least two marriages within this lifetime as a result of the double bodied nature of all of the mutable signs. The mutable signs are also called bicorporeal or double bodied signs. And what that means is that they have two bodies, basically. And so, whenever we have a double bodied sign on the cusp of the descendant, then that can be an indication of a person having multiple marriages. Now, how do I feel about that? I feel as if it's one of those astrological sound bites that's very easy for people to take out of context, especially new astrologers. New astrologers, they love to sit down with their paper and pen and write down, he said, if I have Gemini on my seventh house cusp, that means I'm going to get a divorce, which is the wrong way to think about astrology. When you're learning astrology from someone, you have to think in a broader way and you have to get all of the information into your mind and know how and when to skillfully retrieve pieces of information. And the only skillful way to use astrological information is if we use it as a means of corroborating the momentum of a larger story that we've already established. So just having a mutable sign on the cusp of your seventh house does not mean divorce. It could mean divorce if added to multiple factors or if added to multiple other testimonies for divorce, but it doesn't just mean divorce by itself. It doesn't just mean that today. It didn't just mean that 500 years ago when that aphorism was first created. Because 500 years ago when that aphorism was first created, no astrologer could ever think that an astrologer in any century would just take one thing and use that to build an entire astrological narrative on, in the way how so many of us are prone to do that within the year 2023. It's unbelievable. There's another aphorism that says that if you have a mutable sign, particularly Gemini, on the cusp of your 10th house, then that can be an indication of you having multiple professions. So when the native slash caller said to me that she doesn't just want to be in one profession, I said, I know it might be difficult for you to pinpoint a one profession that you want to do. However, try. And her response was, I don't know if I can do that. And so this is something that sometimes happens when we have the scenario of having a mutable sign, particularly Gemini, on the cusp of the 10th house, because it creates this level of duplicity in terms of what a person feels as if they can accomplish within this lifetime. Being Mercury ruled in general, i.e., having the ruler of the ascendant be any of Mercury's two signs, whether Gemini or Virgo, can also be an indication that that person feels this sense of multiplicity within themselves, so they always feel as if there are multiple paths in life available to them. Because, as we know, Mercury was the only god who could travel through the 9 worlds. He was the only god who can go as high to the highest heaven and as low to the lowest hell. It was Mercury. So there's this sense of a multiplicity of paths ahead of me, all of which look equally tantalizing, all of which I can go down and pursue. So that's another thing that we find whenever we have any of Mercury's two domiciles, either on the cusp of the midheaven or on the cusp of the ascendant. Another thing that adds to this is a good Jupiter. And this native has a good Jupiter. She has Jupiter at 3 degrees Cancer, 10 minutes, in her 10th house of career. If a person has a Jupiter that's too good to be true, such as Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Pisces, and that Jupiter is in their 10th house of career, it can create problems. And I dare say this is more true for people who have Jupiter in Cancer or Pisces and in their 10th house. And the reason for that is because all of the water signs from a traditional astrological perspective are thought of as fruitful signs, which means, as we know, God said to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. I think that's who he said it to. He said to Adam and Eve, go be fruitful and multiply, fill my garden with all of your tiny offspring, basically. So whenever we have Jupiter essentially dignified in either his exaltation of Cancer or his domicile of Pisces and in the 10th house, this also creates this multiplicity of positive possibilities that a person can pursue within their lifetime, which is also a problem because while having too many options might be considered to be a first world problem, whereas having no options is considered to be a third world problem, like where I'm from, the point of the matter is that having too many options and having no options at all both creates a sense of immobility within a person's life. And whereas the immobility of having no options is, oh my God, I have no options, I can't move anywhere, the immobility of having too many options is, oh my God, I have so many options, I can move anywhere and everywhere, and which one do I choose? So that is a challenge that we see manifesting within the life of this native. Her chart, as far as the career story is concerned, in terms of planets in the 10th house, is too good to be true, which some people think that that's a good thing, but I've definitely found many people with the same sort of situation of having a Jupiter very strong in the 10th house, not knowing what to do with themselves. So that's the first thing that we see going on within this chart. I think that it's also vitally important to have in the background of our consciousness the fact that as she is asking this question, she has transiting Neptune, essentially conjunct her descendant, which means it's opposing her ascendant, and it's also casting a sinister square to her midheaven at 25 degrees Gemini, 47 minutes. If you have transiting Neptune afflicting your ascendant as well as your midheaven, chances are you're going to be in a state of confusion. Confusion about where you currently are in the world, confusion about where you want to live, confusion about the relationship that you want to enter, confusion about your career, confusion about what to do professionally. And if it doesn't feel like confusion, it might just feel like another thing where I feel paralyzed. I know that I'm in a situation, and the situation that I'm in doesn't really feel very great at the moment. However, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do in terms of my career. I don't know what to do in terms of where I live. I don't know what to do in terms of my love life. It's a big I don't know what to do sort of period. And very often, people try to thrust themselves into activity when they find themselves in these I don't know what to do periods, because that activity at least feels better than the state of paralysis I find myself in. However, because it's Neptune that is on her ascendant and midheaven, the reality is that trying to thrust yourself into any sort of action at this moment might be foolhardy, or trying to thrust yourself in any direction at this moment may not necessarily end up delivering you much of anything in a very positive way, because the reality is that whenever we build something under the auspices of a transiting Neptune, unless what we are trying to build is a mosque, a synagogue, or a church, if we build something under the auspices of a transiting Neptune, we oftentimes find those things crumbling underneath us and being washed away with time, because the transiting Neptune isn't necessarily the best thing to build anything on top of, especially anything that we particularly want to be ambitious about or anything that we particularly care about. The reality is that she's in a very nebulous state at this moment in terms of the realities of what she wants to be, where she wants to be, how she wants to be there, and when she wants to be there. And all of that is happening. Now, it's not going to be happening forever. Let's take a look at the graphic ephemeris to see when this transiting Neptune is going to leave her alone. Okay, so we're going to pull up the graphic ephemeris, which is a wonderful predictive astrological tool, and we're going to pull it up for a period of 1 year starting in January 2023. So here on the graphic ephemeris, we can see the turquoise wave of Neptune and Pisces crossing her midheaven and ascendant, and that happened first in April of 2023. Then it went down to her moon, and then it came back up across her ascendant and midheaven starting in September, and now we are in the month of October, and it has just gone across her midheaven once more. However, moving into the next year, we find that Neptune is going to once again go down past her midheaven and ascendant, and that's going to be in January to February of next year. And then as time goes on for the rest of 2024, that ascendant and midheaven will no longer be afflicted by the Neptune, because it's going to move other places in her chart and afflict her in other ways. Okay, so the point is that 2026 is another kind of crazy year for her as far as the career situation is concerned, because the Neptune is going to come down past her Mars again. But hopefully she takes advantage of the year 2025, which, as I've said to everybody, and I'll always say it, 2025 is the year of the astrologer. So if you are an astrologer, or if you're trying to get your astrological shit together, then you need to get it together by the year 2025, because 2025 is the year when the astrologer will be called to stand on the world stage in a more robust way. So you heard it here first on the Oraculos Podcast. So she could take advantage of 2025 because 2026 is also a crazy year in terms of career. And then in 2027, the beginning of 2027 is crazy in terms of career. However, the majority of 2027 is fine because the Neptune isn't really touching anything. And then I think that it's really 2028 when this Neptune will really start to leave her alone, because in the year 2028 she doesn't have the Neptune crossing any of her natal factors. And I think that that's looking pretty nice. And I think that's a pretty good thing. And in 2028, she's going to have another great year because she has the Jupiter crossing the ascendant and the midheaven. Who knows? She might relocate. Chances are she will relocate in 2028. And it's going to come back down past the midheaven, the ascendant, the moon, and the node around August of 2028. So the point of the matter is the Neptune is doing things for a while. And so we find ourselves in the state that we're in, asking the question that we're asking. Now, she specifically wants to know whether or not she will be a good author, person, writer, publisher. She specifically wants to know whether or not she will have a successful publishing career, but the publishing career is only one drop within a larger field of career possibilities for her. So let's go and take a look at the publishing career to see whether or not that's looking good within this lifetime. First of all, what I notice is that she has Jupiter, Uranus, midheaven. She has midheaven, Jupiter, Uranus by declination. She has Jupiter parallel her midheaven, and she has Uranus contra-parallel both her midheaven and her Jupiter, all of which is very, very nice. I wish I had Jupiter, Uranus, midheaven within my chart because it is a good luck combination, which says to us that she will always strike gold as far as personal luck is concerned. She's a person who will always be lucky. It's quite an auspicious thing to have this. Few people have it. She has it. She's always going to be lucky, and she's always going to find a way to come out on top. However, just to rain on this parade a little tiny bit, because, we all need to stay relatively humble. When you are a person who has this sort of good luck combination within your chart, it also can create a sense of vast broadness in terms of the possibilities in your life, because you know that you could probably pick up anything and do relatively well at those things. And as a result of that, you sometimes choose not to pick up anything because it feels like, hey, I could just do it tomorrow because I'll be lucky at it tomorrow if I'm going to be lucky at it today. And so that's also another bit of a challenge because it doesn't really allow you to put in the work, as it were, because you know that things will come easily to you. And so it can create a sense of commitment issues to the longevity necessary to really allow one thing to grow well. So she has a very lucky chart in general, but here we're seeing the problematic side of being lucky within a lifetime because it creates too many possibilities that we can potentially be successful at. And as a result of that, even in the process of fulfilling a particular success path, we might get distracted because we want to go and fulfill another success path. Or we find ourselves investing 6 months of time into growing a business, but then we see something else that we want to do, and so we go and we try to build that other business with the next 6 months within the year. And so within the course of 1 year, we find ourselves starting 2 businesses, both of which have the potential to be successful, but neither of them can be successful if we only put 6 months of time into it. And that is a very important thing for us to bear in mind. Someone once told me that it at least takes a minimum of 4 years to actually figure out what you're doing in a particular career mold. The first year, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. The second year, you're licking your wounds and crying over your losses because you realize that a lot of the spaghetti that you threw at the wall didn't actually stick. The third year, you have a greater level of sobriety about yourself because you realize then that, okay, I can see the things that I did before. I can see the mistakes that I did before. I can see the money I wasted before. I'm never going to waste that money again. So the third year, we start to present ourselves in our entrepreneurial endeavor as a mature human being. And it's only in the fourth year that we would have done enough work in order to really see that particular career take on the shape of something that is starting to look like a sustainable career. So, if you're going to do anything from an entrepreneurial perspective, at the minimum, you have to have a 4-year plan. Because if you don't have a 4-year plan, then the fifth year, when you actually start to feel as if you can get some level of autonomy and freedom, and you can feel yourself replenishing your savings account and all of that stuff, the fifth year is never going to meet you if you don't even have a plan to keep yourself committed to a particular career path for at least 4 years of time, is what this other person said to me. I tend to believe that's true. So the reality of this is that she has a very lucky chart, period. And she could pretty much do anything that she puts her mind to. And what's it going to be? So now to end this reading, I'll talk about what's it going to be. Having Uranus parallel your midheaven is a wonderful thing from an astrological perspective because astrologers are very Uranian, unstable people. And so having Uranus parallel the midheaven is a wonderful thing because it says that this instability is the vibrant electricity that my life is built on. Wonderful. It says that you are in the boat or in the category of people who can be an astrologer within this lifetime because, like I said a couple of weeks ago, all astrologers technically are a little bit, they're a little bit on the unstable, instable side of things from their life experiences, and the instability of our lives is what makes us great astrologers. We all have our sufferings. So she could be a great astrologer is the midheaven Uranus. She could also be a great problem solver, which is good for consultation. She has the Jupiter Uranus midheaven. She could be good at international consultation. She could work within firms in order to identify the problems going on within those firms. She could open up a troubleshooting business. That's something that she could do very well. She has the Jupiter within the 10th house ruling the 7th house, which means that she probably could work very well with others from the perspective of working as a counselor, consultant, that sort of thing. I've often said that having the Chiron in the 10th house, even though people know that I have a nebulous relationship with Chiron, I've oftentimes said that having Chiron in the 10th house is another thing that we oftentimes see within the charts of people who are working within either a medical profession specifically or a medicine adjacent profession, such as counseling or therapy or something else that is within the complementary healthcare services is something that we can see with that as well. From a publishing perspective, she has Mercury in a sextile relationship with Jupiter. This is Mercury at 0 degrees Taurus, having a sinister sextile with Jupiter at 3 degrees of Cancer. Mercury sextile Jupiter could also be another indication that's saying to us that she has what it takes in order to be successful at mercurial endeavors, publishing being amongst those mercurial endeavors. So that's something that she can do well, and that's something that we see very much supported within her chart. The 9th house is the house of books. She has the ruler of the 9th house as Venus at 28 degrees Aquarius, 16 minutes in the 5th house of pleasure, which says to us that books are a part of the manifestation of her pleasure within this lifetime, which is another thing that I can say that she can do very well in terms of writing and authorship in general, because you have to find some level of pleasure from authorship in order to be a good author, speaking from experience. So that's something else that she has going on within her chart as well. So all of these factors collectively combined says to us that the things that she desires to do are things that she can do. And I dare say there's also an additional piece to this in terms of what she can do from a healing perspective in terms of her profession. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at her chart from the midpoint listing perspective, and we're going to take a look at the midpoints of career. So we go to reports and we go to midpoint listing, and I'm just going to go for the jugular 5.625, which is the 64th harmonic. The career midpoints are Mars Aries, Mars Node, Sun Apollon. Mars Jupiter could also be success in my career, but in general, I like the Mars Aries, Mars node, Sun Apollon. So we take a look at her Mars node at 041, and at 041, she has nothing standing on the Mars node midpoint. We take a look at the Mars Aries midpoint at 126. And at 126, she has the midheaven standing there, which clearly says to her that her career is something that's very important to her. We also are reminded of the fact that she has Mercury ruling the first house and the 10th house, which is something that we oftentimes see within the charts of people who are entrepreneurs. Mars Jupiter at 301, the successful work that she's doing within this lifetime. Mars Jupiter, she has the moon there. And the moon on the Mars Jupiter midpoint can say that she can work well within the field that has to do with nurturing. Someone pointed out to me the other day that that can also be therapy. So we see multiple things pointing in the direction of therapy within the context of her chart, saying that she could work very well within this lifetime within any of those endeavors. And the last thing that we're going to take a look at is the Sun Apollon midpoint, Apollon being one of our Uranian astrology considerations. And we take a look and see where that is. And she has the Sun Apollon at 317, which was very close to the last one that we just looked for. She has Neptune on the Sun Apollon midpoint. She could be a wonderful medium. If she wanted to be like a psychic medium, even though I personally, anyway, I won't share my opinions about psychic mediums, but she could be a wonderful medium if that's something that she wanted to do. She could work within the healing profession. Sun Apollon equals Neptune. It's also something that can make her be prone to have a nebulous relationship to her work or her career in general. But Sun Apollon equals Neptune can also be something that we find within her life from a healing perspective. She could do good in herbalism if she wanted to get into herbs, because Neptune has to do with all sorts of poisonous concoctions that we drink. All of these things could be wonderful things for her to pursue. So we see the healing piece indicated strongly within her chart. We also see the healing with medicine piece indicated within her chart, which is a good thing for someone who wants to go into the medical profession specifically, or in a medicine adjacent profession within any of the multiple complementary healthcare avenues. We also see that the career in publishing is also strongly supported. She has a love for books. We saw the ruler of the 9th house within the 5th house. She has a love for books, so that makes sense as well. And we also see the entrepreneurial indication as well. So all of these things makes sense within the context of her life. The one thing we want to say to her within all of that is to make sure that she is actually having the grit and the wherewithal to stick with one specific path for a long time, and at least for a minimum of 4 years. We want to feel as if she has at least a 4-year plan for herself in terms of whatever she wants to do professionally, because in the absence of that, she might just find herself swimming in the ocean of possibilities and never actually getting anything done.
It was really interesting to hear. I knew that you would talk about my Neptune. I have Sun square Neptune in Natal, so confusion has been part of my life since I'm born, basically. But these past 2 years have been really bad in terms of knowing what I want to do with my life, both professionally, and my relationships all failed big time as well. So I've been watching out this Neptune, and I can't wait for it to go away. Even I'm a bit scared because it's gonna transit on my Sun in a few years as well. And the Jupiter Uranus bit, when you said that I had a lucky chart, I thought it was interesting because I know that on the outside, people project this a lot on me. They're like, oh, she's lucky, she had a lucky life, or like she has options. But I I dealt with heavy traumas as a child, and I'm actually currently dealing with all of this now, thanks to therapy. So maybe therapy will be on the table in 10 years, I don't know. Um, but because of that, I deal with very low self-esteem issues, and this is what prevented me self-publishing earlier, actually, and this is why it prevented me running my own business. I always wanted to run my business. I always wanted to self-publish my books. I've been writing since I'm 18 years old, so I know I'm gonna stick with it. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that, and it's in a way reassuring. So I will make a plan to make everything happen by 2027, right?
Well, the Neptune is going to leave you alone for quite some time in the year 2025. So, 2025, you'll be okay. I think that 2024 could be another year that feels you're feeling a bit of the Neptunian expanse around you for a bit. Whenever you're going through a Neptunian year, the best thing to do is to find one thing to do and to stick with that one thing, which is a very difficult thing to ask a person when they're going through a Neptune year. Because when you're going through a Neptune year, finding one thing to do is the last thing that your mind even possibly wants to do because everything seems so vast around you. But the remedy to the angst you've been feeling is to find one thing, only one thing that you do on a daily basis and you don't let go of it, because that is the solution to the Neptune, to quickly find an anchor and to make that anchor more and more real and more reassuring by doing it every day. The other thing I have to say about this is it can't be something that you have an ego attachment to. It can't be something that you have any level of ambition attached to or any level of goal orientation. It can't be the thing that's going to turn into your career. It has to be something that has no level of personal gain attached to it, other than the fact that that thing represents a daily anchor within your life. The minute that thing starts to turn into an ambition is the minute that thing stands to be washed out of your life. So find something that feels like that you can do on a daily basis and let that thing be an anchor. It could be a spiritual practice, it could be knitting, it could be crochet, it could be whatever, but you have to do that thing on a daily basis because finding an anchor when you're going through a Neptunian transit is the biggest thing in the world, because otherwise it can feel like it's too much to bear. And we don't want you to experience that side of it. So let's quickly find an anchor so that you could be safe, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yes, I reconnected with dancing actually, and it's been amazing to reconnect with my body and do something just for the pleasure of it and not wanting to turn it into something professional, not like astrology. Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed today's show, then please remember to hit subscribe down below. I'm currently on a mission to get 12,000 subscribers across all platforms, which includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify by the end of November 2023. And it's a tall order, but I'm pretty sure we can do it because we make some really good astrological content here on the Oraculos Podcast. So please remember to hit subscribe down below, hit the notification bell so that you receive notifications of when we come out with these episodes on a daily basis. And please share the Oraculos Podcast with your other astrologically minded friends so that more and more people can know about the amazing work that we're doing over here on the Oraculos Podcast.